Welcome back. Second segment, as I mentioned in the first segment, we're going to talk about the challenges for women who attempt to lead. And the first two definitions that the authors provide in the text, they talk about the glass ceiling. And it's an invisible, but nevertheless real barrier that keeps women from rising up to higher managerial levels in an organization. And I think that's a fair definition. And I've seen that take place, especially in healthcare. When I first started out, in the early '90s, you just, especially in COO, CEO, CIO, actuarial, you just, in those C-suite positions, you just didn't see that many females. It was a good old boys club, small network of promotable applicants, and it was really difficult for women to get into those roles. If you fast forward it now to healthcare, you have, I don't want to say a lot, but you have a fair number of females in president, CEO, COO positions that have moved their way up the ladder, and then they've been promoted, and some extremely successful and some not too successful. And so the ones that have not been too successful, that you kind of ties into this second definition, and that's the glass cliff, a phenomenon where once a woman is able to break through the glass ceiling, that individual may end up in positions or circumstances in which they fail. I've seen that happen too. I've seen it happen with women. I've seen it happen with men. It just sometimes happens, especially individuals that you'll hear people in different firms, and it's not just healthcare. It's a lot of organizations talk about, so and so's a rock star. So and so's got rockets in their pockets. I mean, they are destined for the C-suite roles and those leadership roles that are going to drive this company forward. And unfortunately, in a glass cliff situation, again, to me, I've seen women fail. I've seen men fail. I've seen minorities fail. I've seen a lot of different individuals that have been promoted into positions where they didn't have the expertise, and they were doomed for failure. They just, unfortunately, they were promoted for whatever reason, and it was just doomed for failure. And I think back in my career, and I've seen individuals, promoted into these high-level management leadership positions. Maybe their father was a friend of the CEO. Or maybe it was, the CEO's, the offspring of the CEO's first cousin, or, some combination of network tied back to the CEO. And all of a sudden you see these individuals being promoted up the chain, and you're thinking, how in the world do they get promoted like that? And then all of a sudden it becomes clear. And unfortunately for them, and to some instances, unfortunately for the organization, they're promoted into those situations, and it was an abject failure. And I've been in organizations in the past where their abject failure almost drove the company into a financial situation that the company couldn't dig their way out of. So it's unfortunate when people break through that glass ceiling. Again, not just women, but other individuals break through that glass ceiling, and then they get there and they can't perform, and then they hit that glass cliff, and it's tough on them personally, but in some instances it's tough on the organization that they work for. And what typically happens is positions where likelihood of failure is high, and they lack support. Could be sexual harassment, could be lack of experience or expertise. A lot of factors go into what pushes individuals off of that glass cliff. and have them end up, again, abject failure, and hope that when it happens, it doesn't damage the organization any more than it has to be. And then the authors get into, and they talk about attributions of being a diversity hire promotion. And again, now we're thinking about a diversity hire. It could be race, it could be gender, it could be ethnicity, it could be a lot of factors driving that diversity hire, and it's surrounded by followers and peers that subtly or overtly suggest that the reason for promotion was based on, in the text they talk about sex of a person, but it could be a relationship of a person. It could be, go back to the DEI, it could be a function of individuals that organizations were trying to promote DEI, and they promote individuals into positions. Or again, I go back to the relationships that I've seen with CEOs and vice presidents in the past, and it's cousins or friends of a friend or child of a friend or something that bumps them up there, and they just don't. And most of those, they just don't have the expertise. Unfortunately, they don't have the expertise. And then they talk about reverse discrimination. And reverse discrimination occurs when favorable actions, hiring, promotions, or work assignments toward group members who are in a minority are perceived to be unfair or unwarranted by group members who are in the majority. And it doesn't, from my perspective and my experience, it doesn't necessarily mean it was reverse discrimination. It's the perception that it was reverse discrimination by the majority of the group. So it's, perception is driving reality. Reality might not have anything to do with reverse discrimination, but it's the perception of others in the group that is driving that reality. And as a leader, especially if you're promoting individuals, it is extremely difficult as a leader to have to manage that, perception of reverse discrimination. I had an issue at one point where I had a manager position open, and I promoted an individual, and happened to be a minority female, and I promoted that individual because of the expertise. I mean, that individual was truly a rock star, one of the best programmers I've ever seen, one of the best analysts I'd ever worked with, and knew how to program and to analyze and to actually motivate a team. One of those individuals that always stood out in the in group, kind of individuals, stick her head in the office door on a Friday afternoon and say, hey, you need any help doing anything this weekend, or along those lines, and promoted her, and she hit the ground running. And about a month later, I get a call from HR, and they said, well, there's a grievance been filed because of reverse discrimination. You promoted her over individuals that your team thought should have gotten the position. And sat down with HR and explained it to them. The individual, my direct supervisor, explained it to HR, and nothing ever came of it, simply because there were no grounds for reverse discrimination. So went back through the interview process, and it was obvious of the candidates interviewed, by far the best individual for that position, but the perception among the rest of the team, especially the team that she was going to manage, they had the perception of reverse discrimination. I had to sit them down and talk to them and explain the situation to them. And once it's explained to them and pointed out, here's the pros, I don't have any cons really, and it diffused the perception of reverse discrimination. If a new leader picks up on the perceptions, you end up with a new leader, a new manager, a new director. Nobody, depending on what the position that have been promoted into, they can get defensive. They may have a lack of confidence. They may end up with a chip on their shoulder. New leaders have a difficult time leading or influencing the rest of the team if they think reverse discrimination is involved. And unfortunately, it takes a strong mentor, is vital to the success in many cases. And I think that's one thing I learned in the situation that I faced in promoting this individual to a manager. Uh, mentoring and motivating and working with that individual, it I mean, again, she has gone on. She is an extremely successful individual, in today's world. So, I've really enjoyed watching her, follow her promotion up the ladder, and it's been great. And it kept her from either sliding or being pushed off the cliff because it was kind of touch and go there for a while. And then the authors get into perceived role of incongruity and stereotyping. And a role of incongruity is a situation in which an individual could be perceived to be incongruent with the leadership role because of that person's gender or background. And a lot of times, the incongruent aspect is tried to tie back to gender or ethnicity or race or some type of background. But a lot of time it's just the individual. It's really none of those factors as much as the individual must have done a really good job in the interview process, because either that or they were promoted because they were a friend of a friend, and they get into a position and they fail because they just don't have the experience. They don't have the expertise, just the basic expertise that is required for those types of positions. It's like taking somebody that is not mathematically oriented and putting them into a position where they have to manage a group of analysts. And we'll take healthcare as my experience in healthcare as an example. I've seen managers in healthcare, especially in network management and medical management, even on the IT side, that have been promoted into manager and leadership positions that just didn't have the expertise to move those teams forward, and they end up falling off that glass cliff. There's just they don't have a strong enough mentor to help them and guide them along the way, and they're almost left as they're just like dangling in the wind, so to say, so to speak. So if you decide to promote somebody like that for a reason other than expertise and the probability of them being able to manage that team, you better hope you're a strong mentor, and I hope you're a strong motivator and can help offset some of these incongruent or stereotypical type issues that you're more than likely to face as a leader. And the text talks about leadership roles that stress forcefulness, top-down command and control, decisiveness, aggressive behavior. And that, if you think about it, that's male behavior. That's male behavior, I guess you could say, at its finest. Whether that's the skill set that you need to have as a leader, a lot of times that's a skill set that a male leader or a male behavior brings to the table when they're a leader. And conversely, women seem to figure, consensual, collaborative, relationship building approach. I mean, think of all the individuals that you worked with in the past that females promoted into leadership positions, and just think back about. I mean, I've seen some extremely successful women in leadership roles, and this is their leadership style. They just are not going to kind of go down that male track, and that's okay. From my perspective, it doesn't matter, what your leadership role stress is, as long as you can, at the end of the day, beat the goals, help your teams move forward, and help the organization move forward. That's the important thing. However you go about being successful as a leader, whether it's forceful, whether it's collaborative, relationship building, I don't have a problem either way. I think it's whatever fits, and we've talked about it in some of the earlier chapters. It's what fits for you as a leader. It's what your leadership style. And as long as you have a team that is willing to go the extra mile for you, and a team that's successful, and a team that helps the organization move forward, I think you kind of stick with that leadership style. They mention in the text the backlash effect, and that's women not being nice if they act like males. And I've seen that occur a time or two in the past, and it's unfortunate because you have females in a position where they think they have to act like males to get the results that they need to make the team successful, and it becomes extremely difficult. Women tend to have issues with applying strict disciplinary action to followers. And that's kind of that's when you're starting to stereotype women in leadership roles. And I personally have seen some women in leadership roles that didn't have any problem at all with behavioral issues and, being able to discipline individuals. So I think it all goes back to what your experience has been. It's what the situation involves. And we've all seen along the way, different attributions, stereotype, incongruent comments and situations. And I think at the end of the day, it's just a matter of, does that individual that is the leader have enough strength of conviction and a mentor that is going to help them work through those types of situations. And then kind of tie this second segment up, 2 key strategies to overcome for women. One is to develop situational or consistency stances toward negative attributions. May need to be firm and forceful instead of, authoritative, collaborative, or relationship building. So that's where you've got women are having to kind of walk that tightrope and having to be flexible enough. Again, remember we talked about flexible leadership earlier on in some of the other chapters. And, the successful women that I have known in the past, they are leaders and successful leaders because they're extremely flexible. They're able to walk both sides of that line. And then secondarily, meet stereotyping or challenges in an authoritative manner. And again, it's a catch-22 because they don't want to be, I guess, stereotyped as acting like males, but at the same time, they have to be authoritative and have to be able to make decisions when the going gets tough, or when you hear them talk about when the rubber hits the road. And that's when your decision-making process comes into question or comes into play. And I think that the authors talk about authenticity is important. And I think authenticity is extremely important. But again, talked about authenticity in some of the earlier chapters and how important it was in leadership. And it's definitely important and kind of in the minority leadership realm. And with that, we're going to kind of wrap up that second section. When we come back, we're going to talk about challenges for male leaders in an increasingly diverse environment. Talk to everybody in a few minutes.